Attorney General Pam Bondi revealed that she's asked her deputy Todd Blanche to meet Ghislaine Maxwell in the coming days. He'll ask her whether she will cooperate with prosecutors from the Department of Justice and potentially reveal the names of any powerful figures who may be guilty of crimes. But will she do it? And can we trust her if she does? Well, Ian Maxwell is Ghislaine's brother, and he joins me now in the Uncensored studio. Ian, welcome to Uncensored. You're her brother, Ghislaine. So let me start by asking you for your reaction to two bits of breaking news today. The first was that the Attorney General Pam Bondi has directed for her deputy to go and see Ghislaine in prison. What is your response to that, first of all?
You really have to ask yourself, why didn't the DOJ ask to speak to Ghislaine before they indicted her? Why is it only now? And the reason I say that is because in 2019, after Epstein died and up until Ghislaine's own arrest in 2020, she was, to the best of her knowledge and her lawyer's knowledge, not a target. She remained in the United States. They made her, Ghislaine, available for questions and kept on being said, she's not a target, she's not a target. Suddenly, bang, 60 officers come down on a house in New Hampshire where she was, huge show, this power of arrest and so forth, and then there is a disgraceful press conference organized by the DOJ's attorney in New York, and she is pointed at with a picture of Epstein, the subtext being, this woman is guilty. So we considered that all of that entire process was prosecutorial misconduct. And finally, they decided that they wanted to talk to her.
So you think it should have been done years ago?
Of course.
The second development is that the House Oversight Committee, Congress, has voted to subpoena Ghislaine. Will she be willing, from your understanding, will she be willing to talk to both the Deputy Attorney General and to be deposed by the United States Congress?
Well, this has happened quite literally, and I've only heard it, as you have at the same time, in the last 5 minutes about the Republicans deciding that they're going to subpoena her. At the moment, Ghislaine's lawyer, David Oscar Marcus, has indicated that he is talking to the government to set up this originally requested meeting with Todd Blanche. Whilst this is going on, you need to be aware that Ghislaine is involved in multiple live legal proceedings. She has a live petition in front of the Supreme Court. The government has chosen to oppose that. The same DOJ that is wanting to interview her is opposing her simultaneously. It's quite an unusual position, but that is what the position is. So she has to respond and has to rebut that opposition. That's one set of proceedings ongoing. Then she has to decide how to deal with this particular request that's come in from the DOJ. Now we know that there's a subpoena request coming into Congress, which has to be considered. And in addition to all of that, she has a live, not yet live legally, but in the process of being prepared, a motion, which is known as a habeas corpus motion, to be brought in front of the district court back in New York, in which she's entitled to bring new evidence that was not available at her trial, showing government misconduct prior to the trial, in the trial, and post the trial, including, for example, the now, as far as we're concerned, confirmed perjury of one particular juror who perjured himself in front of the judge at the hearing brought at her request as to why he did not disclose his prior sexual abuse on the jury selection form. So all of this is to say that Ghislaine didn't have a fair trial. That's the bottom line. And in order to be able to deal with all of these things, while simultaneously being in prison, and a damn dangerous prison it is too. So it's very, very hard to see the sequencing of all of this.
But if she's, as you say, a victim of a miscarriage of justice, then there would be no obvious reason why she would not want to cooperate with the authorities. I mean, particularly the chance to address Congress, for example, where the whole world would watch. And if she is as innocent as you say, then isn't that the perfect opportunity? I mean, why wouldn't she? I mean, if she doesn't do that and she doesn't cooperate with the Attorney General's office, people are going to assume guilt, aren't they?
I don't think so. I think you have to separate the agendas of everybody involved here. What is Ghislaine's agenda? She has been in jail over 5 years. She wants to get free. The reason she wants to be free is because the petition to the Supreme Court is one that says, I should never have been prosecuted because I was a beneficiary of the Jeffrey Epstein negotiated non-prosecution agreement. So her opening position is to say this should never have been brought.
But that's not the same as saying you're innocent.
Wait a minute. The most important point is that if you should never have been prosecuted, you should never have been prosecuted. And I don't know what you have in mind when you say that.
Well, I simply say that would be a legal argument that you would be immune from being prosecuted. That doesn't mean automatically you're an innocent person. It just means that you may have been part of what many people think in relation to Epstein was a ridiculous farce in which somebody who clearly was a very predatory paedophile ends up getting an incredibly lenient sentence, albeit he remains a convicted paedophile. And so anyone associated with him in that case, if you were immune from prosecution, the court of public opinion is not going to view that as an assertion of your innocence.
Ghislaine her trial took place when she had one arm tied behind her back, both physically, because she was abused significantly in the 2 years prior to trial. She was under suicide watch, she was in an isolation cell, she was physically abused by the guards. She was woken up every 15 minutes and couldn't sleep for 2 years. So that's how she presented at trial. And then we now know that her trial was full of government misconduct. From the start, she was unable to bring evidence in her own defense, on the one hand. And for example, I'll give you one example.
Well, she could have testified. She chose not to.
She was advised not to because her own defense was had been held below the water by the prosecution.
But after her conviction, she did appeal, and the appeals court rejected the appeal. So going to the Supreme Court is actually the next stage of the appeals process. But she's already had a court convict her, a jury. She's then had an appeals court of 3 judges uphold that conviction. Wow. I understand. Listen, I would do everything I could for my sister.
Sure.
Let me be clear, okay? So I admire your attempts to get your sister out of prison, just on a human level. I understand it. And it must have been a horrendous thing for you as her brother to watch all this go down. You know, we've got a clip. She gave an interview to Talk Television, actually. We've got a clip from that.
They wake you up at 6. And you can go to breakfast, which consists of a cereal and a piece of fruit, generally. And then you have to make your bed, sort of military style.
And it was quite a long interview, but I met her once at a book launch in New York. She bore no relation physically to how she was then. I mean, just on a physical level, it's obvious what the impact of all this has had on her. But in relation to her innocence or otherwise, let's just get a few things on the table in terms of facts. From your understanding, when did she first meet Epstein? Because there is confusion about that. Some say it was an introduction by your father, Robert Maxwell, the publisher. Others say it was at a party or whatever. What's the truth?
My father was not involved.
Right.
Start with that. She met him, I believe, sometime in 1991. And either just before or just after our father died. And then was with him up until, I would say, sometime like late 90s. Right? When you could consider they were...
In a relationship.
An item,
right.
Correct. But this wasn't a relationship, a very standard relationship. They didn't live in the same home. He lived in his home, she lived in her home. She didn't have a key to his house. He didn't have a key to her house. So they lived, they were intimate, but he did not share with her in any way what he was doing at any given of the time of the day. So we know, because evidence was already available before the start of the trial, that there are emails written by Epstein to associates saying, do not show this to Ghislaine. Wait until Ghislaine has gone. Do not tell Ghislaine. So this is a very strange kind of situation. So I think it's entirely correct that the view of Ghislaine and Epstein was wrong in terms of the way that they interact.
But in her court case, there were a number of people, not just the victims, but also housekeepers of various properties belonging to Epstein, who painted a picture of Ghislaine being his Miss Fix-It. She was the one that ran things. She was the one that couriered people around. She was the one that knew what he liked, even down to sexual peccadillos and so on. That she was, almost acting like his madame, for want of a better phrase. And there were a number of people, many people, who painted the same picture, that she wasn't just some peripheral lover on the side who had no knowledge of his movements. She was, in many cases, planning his movements.
Well, we now know from grand jury transcripts of the 2007-8 indictment of Jeffrey Epstein, the first time, which were released only in December 2024, so just a few months ago, by Governor DeSantis, that there is significant differences of what witnesses said, including witnesses, 3 or 4 of them, that came to the 2021 trial of Ghislaine, and what they said in the 2006-7 trial indictment of Jeffrey Epstein. The defense were not provided those and could not, therefore, cross-examine the witnesses, including the women, the accusers, as to where this abuse took place, when this abuse took place. And it's critical because it goes to the ages of the girls in each case, not just isolated. And it goes to the veracity of core witnesses. And we know this, Piers, because of this. Their juror number 50 turned out to have lied on his jury form.
You said that, yeah.
Now, it's not just that he lied on his jury form about his prior sexual abuse, but we know because he spoke to an independent journalist of The Independent about what went on in that jury room and what influence he personally had on other jurors, and crucially on bits of evidence on what was considered important by the jury and what was not considered important.
Okay, but let me just, for those who are not as familiar with the case as you obviously are, and I am, the women victims who testified, Jane, Kate and Carolyn were all pseudonyms. Annie Farmer testified under her real name. Testimony under oath from all these victims included Jane, who said that Ghislaine sometimes joined in on the sexualized massages with Epstein. Kate testified that Ghislaine had set up those sexual meetings. Carolyn testified that Ghislaine once touched her breasts, her hips and her butt, told her she had a great body for Epstein and his friends. She was 14 at the time, she said. And Annie Farmer, who did give her, or wanted to testify under her real name, testified that when she was just 16, Ghislaine massaged her naked chest at Epstein's New Mexico ranch in 1996. Is your position that they were all lying?
Well, my position is that Ghislaine was never given the chance to cross-examine them properly on their testimony based on...
I understand that, but that's a different...
Based
that's a
on
different
new
question.
information
But that's a different question.
That was not available.
No, but that's a different question. It is your position, as her brother, who's obviously talked to her about this myriad times,
well,
is your position that these victims are all lying?
I believe my sister. She has consistently told the truth. Her lawyer just this morning said that she fully intends to continue telling the truth. And what's interesting is that as more and more things come out, as more and more examples of misconduct come out, the truth of Ghislaine is also coming out. And therefore, the short answer to your question is that Ghislaine has denied all of this, and I believe that she is telling the truth.
But she stayed friends with Epstein after his conviction for being a paedophile.
No, I think the position is this. The relationship came to an end, I would say, round about 1999.
Right, but their friendship
in terms of an intimate relationship. Then in 2000, a key associate of Epstein by the name of Sarah Kellum was employed to do all of the arrangements of planes or whatever you will. The relationship between Ghislaine and Epstein at that point became essentially a professional relationship. And she was tasked with the renovations of his multiple houses and all that kind of
But
stuff.
how long did she continue to be friends with him?
Hard to say. I mean, she was in a full-on relationship with a man called Ted Waite from 2003 to 2011. Certainly by the time of his conviction, I don't think that there was any meaningful continuing interaction.
Look, my point is this. She stayed pretty close to him and friendly with him. I'm not saying what particular capacity, I accept they weren't lovers, but she certainly didn't distance herself or disown him, despite his conviction for procuring sex with an underage prostitute. So my question for you is, you're convinced of her absolute innocence here, and yet she knew this guy that she was so close to was a convicted paedophile from 2008-9 onwards. And my question to you would be, well, why would she still hang around with him? It's a question I would ask Prince Andrew. He was asked it, of course, in the infamous Newsnight interview, and all the others, is that you can make an argument. You know, Donald Trump never saw him or dealt with him again, according to what he and his people have said. But there are many people, including Ghislaine, who continued to hang out with him. Well, and if I was her brother, that would raise a few alarm bells with me about actually whether she's telling me the full story. Because there it is in black and white. He was a convicted paedophile.
Well, I would question you on your facts as to hanging around or remaining close or remaining friendly. I don't think that's the case with Ghislaine, and I think your dates are wrong.
So she never saw him or talked to him again after 2008-9, after the conviction.
But
that's not what's been reported.
Well, I think there is a picture, quite a well-known picture now, which was pointed to by the prosecutor when the day of Ghislaine's arrest, which shows her in quite a snug embrace with Epstein, which I think is dated to 2006 or something like that. Now, she was full out with this other fellow, Ted Waite, at the time, and we know that they bumped into Epstein at some social event, and he grabbed her round the neck, and someone took a picture. So, I mean, I'm not saying that they never saw each other, but it's that type of context in which that took place.
Do you know how much money Epstein paid her?
How much
money he paid her over the years?
No.
Because she was leading an extraordinarily affluent life, and no one was quite sure where all this money came from. And the presumption is it was her fees from Epstein.
I don't think that's entirely right. I mean, she was a very talented girl. She was an NASD trader in her own right. She had various skills which she was able to turn into, including decorating houses and all the rest of it. So I don't accept that Epstein was her sole source of money, and nor do I believe that it's as vast as you paint it.
Well, I didn't say sole, and I didn't put a figure on it, but the reports have suggested she got paid many millions of dollars over the time of their relationship, both personal and then strictly professional.
Well, we would need to check this out. As I explained to you, she had a professional relationship with him, looking after his houses, decorating.
Sure.
It's entirely possible that the accounts into which some of the money went for these substantial decorations, including the plane and so forth, may have come close to her. I can't tell you that, but that's what I suspect. I don't think these numbers are very real at all, so I don't buy it.
In the trial, there was exhibit GX52. This was Ghislaine's supposed little black book. Most of the contents were redacted from court filings. But in a November 12 filing, federal prosecutors contended the book contained compelling evidence of Ghislaine's guilt. In 2015, Gawker, the website at the time, published a redacted copy of its contents, including the names of world leaders, famous performers, business titans, and so on. What can you say about the little black book of all the details?
Listen, there was an address book for sure. It had the names of people, famous people, people that work for them, friends, whatever. You have one, I have one. So let's not try and big it up for more than it is. I think it was a high-quality address book. I don't think it constitutes a list, let alone a list of alleged people to whom young minor girls were trafficked. So Ghislaine's position on this, for what it's worth, is, I mean, she doesn't ever believe that such a list existed.
But do you believe that Epstein was a predatory paedophile? Because many people believe he may have abused thousands of girls, many of whom were underage. That is the working presumption about Epstein. Do you believe that?
Well, do I believe it? I believe that he had some really strange predilections for young girls.
Well, it's called paedophilia. Let's call it what it is.
Okay, you want to call it paedophilia?
Well, he was convicted of it, so it's a pretty good indication that that's
fine.
That's what
fine.
he liked.
So there's no issue that was his modus operandi for his own pleasure.
Right.
But I don't believe that it goes beyond his own predilections.
So all these men that were going to the island, going to the houses for these parties, Prince Andrew, for example, who was wrapped with his arm, photographed his arm around Virginia Giuffre with Ghislaine in the background.
Well, let's deal with that.
Well, we'll come to that in a moment. But,
Okay.
well, we will. But is your position, and obviously you would know from what Ghislaine's told you that it's her position, is the position that, yes, he was a massively predatory paedophile for decades, but that Ghislaine, who was around him for large amounts of that period, that she knew nothing about any of that?
Well, we've got to go back in time. And I know you pressed it to one side, but in the 2006-7 indictment of Epstein, which is the first time the authorities booked him, if you want.
Yeah.
Right. The police detective who ran the entire charge for the Miami Police Department, which was responsible for doing the investigation, was asked on oath, was Ghislaine Maxwell a target? No. Was Ghislaine Maxwell's name mentioned? No.
But that's not my question. That wasn't my question.
You've asked me a question about you. You made a statement. Forgive me. Can I finish?
Yeah, but that wasn't the question.
You said to me, you said to me, Ghislaine was there for a large part of decades.
Yes.
This just isn't true.
Well, through the 90s and 2000s?
No, that's a quick elision. It didn't happen. They meet in 91. They're intimate, I believe, until tail end of the 90s. The professional relationship begins then. The new associate I mentioned, Sarah Kellen, comes in, does all whatever the organizing of the normal backwards and forwards of his life is concerned with, and she goes with Ted Wade from 2003 to 2011. I've said they bumped into Epstein from time to time. So we're talking about, remember, the indictment alone runs 94, 2001 of Ghislaine's indictment. And so I tried to explain to you that she was cut out of communications and cut out of his life in large elements. So this is a man who compartmentalized his life and compartmentalized his personal life. And it's important that Ghislaine, I can only assume, based on those emails of saying exclude her here, exclude her there, because she is a crucial conduit to important men, political men, bankers and so forth. That you can't mix those two.
Do you accept that she may have pulled the wool over your...
I believe myself. I've known her for 60 years.
Yeah.
Piers. But, I'm not going to suddenly say she started pulling the wool. I don't think so. I don't believe so. Not for a second. Not for a second. And interestingly, President Trump was asked the only time, I believe, in public, at the tail end of his presidency, so say, November, December 2021, about Ghislaine. And he said, I don't know much about it, but I wish her well. And I don't think that anyone else showed the slightest piece of humanity. Not anybody at that time, and yet he did. He didn't need to. He's the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world. He could have just sloughed it off. He didn't. He made a positive statement. I'm very grateful to that. I know Ghislaine was too.
Do you think that she will testify to Congress if she's given immunity?
Well, I've just told you that there are multiple...
I understand that, but...
Wait a minute.
Is that what she would require?
If you want the answer to the question, you've got to let me explain it to you.
Yeah.
The immunity. You've got to be careful about things like immunity in a situation where you've got live legal proceedings, We can't find that if Ghislaine says, OK, I'm going to start testifying, that she is somehow attacked ex post facto for procedural nonsense, and she's accused of lying to Congress. And this is, you cannot take this lightly. We just heard about the possible subpoenaing, or the definitive subpoenaing, or whatever. It doesn't mean that when she, a subpoena is a command to come to Congress, right, and to testify. But it could be possible for Ghislaine not to testify. She may be advised in the midst of her legal proceedings that she should take the Fifth, which would be a pity, because she's never taken the Fifth, not once, not in any of the civil proceedings, not once.
No, but she didn't testify in her criminal case.
That's the right of every defendant.
Sure, but she didn't testify, is my point.
She did not testify because she believed...
She's never actually testified under oath about any of this,
wait a
right?
minute. She believed that the government had not made its case. It's not for Ghislaine to make the government's case.
I understand, but she could have testified.
She could have testified. Of course she could have testified.
Let me ask you, Ian, do you believe Jeffrey Epstein killed himself?
I have to say that was my original view. I think it's entirely plausible that could have happened. However, I think the jury must be out on the manner of his death. I think the investigation was shoddy. I think it was cursory. I think the guards involved were let off pretty lightly. I think the footage we've seen of the film is not terribly conclusive. There's a flex from a CPAP machine which helps you breathe better. Why couldn't that have been used as a ligature? We don't know. And the pathologist that was brought in by the Epstein family did not consider that the injuries to Epstein's neck were conclusive of suicide, and he thought it was more likely that it was homicide. And so that's my take on it. Remember, prisons are damn dangerous places. There are murderers on the wing where he was. He is a convicted paedophile. So, nonsense, as we call them in Britain, gets short shrift in prison. You know it and I know it.
Do you worry that if your sister agrees to testify, that her life will be in danger?
I think Ghislaine's life is in danger today. She's in a prison. It's a violent place. And we know that there's heavy overcrowding in Tallahassee, that now higher category prisoners are being admitted. So yes, I think it's, the prisoners are awash with drugs. It's extremely violent. It also is so ridiculous. She has no paper. Piers, she can't even instruct her lawyers. I mean, what kind of a situation is this? Where is the justice in that system?
Tell me briefly about the Prince Andrew photograph, the infamous picture with his arm around Virginia Giuffre, with your sister in the background. Some people have tried to cast aspersion over the veracity of that, but we know that Andrew paid a reported $11 million to avoid having this argument in public court. So what is your view of it? Well,
You've made several points. The first thing I want to deal with is the photograph. This photograph was allegedly taken on the 10th of March, 2001. I think I'm right about that. The weekend of 10-11 March. Now, Ghislaine had flown from the United States to England for one purpose that weekend. It was to attend my mother's 80th birthday celebration, which took place 50 miles away from London at my then sister-in-law's house, the house of my brother Kevin. We have footage of Ghislaine on that weekend. There, we have people who saw her there. Now, you cannot be in two places at the same time. That's my take on the picture. You draw the conclusion.
Well, 30 miles is not that far to drive.
You draw the...
Is it?
In the midst of a family gathering.
So you're saying the picture was fake?
I'm saying you can't be in two places at once.
So is the picture fake, do you think?
Well, what do you think?
I don't understand.
From that...
Well, if the picture was fake...
expressed it.
If your picture was...
Listen, Ghislaine has herself considered that she has no memory of that picture ever being taken. She has no memory of the event taking place, and for what it's worth, nor did Prince Andrew, because he's on...
So why did he give Virginia Giuffre $11 million to avoid
that's a good question.
A court case he vowed to have?
The real reason that he folded his tent was not that he didn't have a decent case or a decent crack at proving that Virginia Giuffre was a serial liar, which we know is the case, because Professor Dershowitz was accused also of having slept with her. But unlike Andrew, he stuck to his guns and she had to pull. Now,
but she did.
You have to remember.
Well, hang on.
You have to remember.
Hang on 1 second. But Ian, on the question of whether Virginia Giuffre lied about Ghislaine, as you know, Virginia Giuffre sued Ghislaine for calling her a liar, and in the end, Ghislaine paid a reported millions of dollars as a settlement. Why would she have done that?
Well,
if Virginia Giuffre was lying.
Let's just get back to finish your question on Andrew, because you've asked that question I haven't answered. You have to remember the context in which he filled it. It was his mother's 70th Jubilee year. She's at the end of her life. She's at the end of her reign. She wants to finish and go out on a bang. And this could not happen. I think he folded his tent either at her direct request or at the request of other members of the family that said, we can't have this. It's too bad. You just have to fold it, take the pain, and just move on. Right? Now, so that's as far as Andrew is concerned. In the case of Ghislaine, it's a really different position because the transcripts of the civil case between Giuffre and Ghislaine found their way utterly inappropriately, and as we now know, illegally, into her criminal trial. But the transcripts as affecting Giuffre, so what came into the trial was all of what Ghislaine had to say and what Ghislaine did, but not what Giuffre has admitted and what Giuffre did. So part of what we want to get released, and which we hope that President Trump will authorize, and the DOJ will proceed, and Pam Bondi will get on with, is to have all of those transcripts in the public domain.
But why did Ghislaine pay her millions of dollars?
Listen, it reached a point where the matter was sealed. There would be no more finish to the whole thing. It was finished. She had enough. They came to an arrangement. We don't know what that arrangement was, actually. I don't know to this day. It finished.
Just finally, there's a lot of speculation about whether Epstein was some kind of Israeli agent working for Mossad or some other entity. And there's also been a further suggestion that your father, Robert Maxwell, was also an Israeli agent, maybe also working for Mossad. What can you say about that?
Well, just dealing with my father briefly, it's well known that he was a major supporter of the State of Israel. From its independence war of 1948, unknown to me, but described in a book that came out a few years ago, he was instrumental in ensuring that Israel had Spitfires and replacement parts required to defend itself and to ensure that it won that particular war. Later on, when he was a much more well-known man, he discovered the treachery of Vanunu. This was a man who had exposed Israel's nuclear secrets and ended up being quite helpful to Israel to get him and get him into jail. So that's as far as my father's concerned. I would dispute the idea that he was a member of Mossad or that he wasn't some kind of an agent of theirs. I think he was definitely a strong supporter of the State of Israel. Certainly he was on the Arab boycott and was proud of it. List. Epstein, I have not a clue. We know that one of the former Israeli prime ministers, Barak, I think, just last week said that it was not the case. Quite the contrary. Why would he take such a man on to be an agent? So that's what Israel has to say about it. As for Ghislaine, I have not the slightest doubt that my father would never have involved her in any such matters. Not with the Mossad, not with the British Secret Service, nothing. So I dispute all of that.
Your father fell off a boat, his boat, as everybody knows. How do you believe he died?
I have always accepted that it was an accident, that he fell from that boat. We know from some of the autopsy pictures released that there are really terrible tears in the muscles on his back, which would be indicating that he just tried to hang on either to the stairs or to the stern of the boat. So he was not a well man at the time of his death. He was very, very overweight. And so I think that's good for me. And I just don't buy the murder, although Ghislaine does and has always thought that he was murdered.
Have you had any contact with Prince Andrew?
Have I?
Yeah, recently.
No, not recently. Not. I think I met him at a time when Ghislaine was with him, or saw quite a bit of him, and that would have been at least 15, 18, 20 years ago. So no.
Ian Maxwell, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.